Indeed. Okay, back to you, Alex.
Yes, German horrors get worse, actually. We start this segment with something that's nearly 2 months old in Der Spiegel, in their Panorama imprint, which goes deeper into societal issues. At this point, in early July, they were reporting that the northern states of Lower Saxony, Niedersachsen, had decided to put a stop to what was called a Körpererkundungsraum, or a body exploration space, at a nursery. A Kita, a German acronym, is a daycare center for preschool children. And there were already plans at this point in one particular nursery, Kita in Hanover, to have a groping area specifically for children to explore themselves sexually. This was halted by the Landesjugendamt, the state youth authority, as completely reprehensible and not going ahead. People thought that issue then had gone to bed in Germany, but of course it is a state-by-state issue in this federal system the Germans have, with 16 states with widely differing governments and persuasions. The next thing that we find is Die Welt last week is reporting, and this illustration I had to cut off there because it gets pubic below that. This isn't actually from the nurseries for context. These are dolls which are used to teach students who become sexualizers of children. Germany's only dedicated sexual education course in another state, but that's what Die Welt used to illustrate the piece. What they're reporting here under the title, Where Men Give Birth to Babies and the Words Man and Woman Are Taboo, is that there are now 2 nurseries in the next state to the south, a very different context. It's got a Green Party-led government. It's got a Roman Catholic tradition rather than a Lutheran one. Sometimes these things actually make a big difference on a local level, sometimes for ill and sometimes for good. So what we find is that this matter has reared its head again in this state, Nordrhein-Westfalen. Just a few miles over the border, actually, from where I'm talking to you, are these places that are being talked about in this article, that North Rhine-Westphalia, it doesn't say so in this piece, but with a Green Party-led government now, see things differently from Lower Saxony, because children need to understand sexual relationships, and they can't be prohibited from masturbating at these nurseries. This is language which has come from the children's ministry in the state, not from the nurseries themselves. The only thing the ministry is putting a stop to in the case of this other state, North Rhine-Westphalia, is that you can't have separate rooms for groping yourself as a small child. These should not be provided. This leaves the prospect open that the other things that are talked about, the masturbation and the sexualized doctor play, which is a big focus of these nurseries, perhaps will go ahead as before, but there will be no private spaces for it. It will be in view of the adults, which gets darker and darker. The next extract says that children will be allowed in these policies from these nurseries to withdraw to a protected area to discover themselves bodily and to satisfy themselves. This is already happening at this nursery in Kerpen, just over the border from here in Western Germany. There is the nursery's sexual pedagogy plan, which has been dug out by bloggers. It is supposedly a Roman Catholic nursery dedicated to, or in the name of St. Rochus, which makes it even more surprising. I understand that in Roman Catholic history, St. Rochus is one of the 14 helpers who are strong in intercession. But look at this. I'm not proposing to read this out because it's disgusting, but section 10 of their policy, which has not been contradicted by the state government now, is that there's that much detail on the page about young children's right to masturbate. To write 8 paragraphs about young children and masturbation is perhaps in itself rather shocking. But it gets worse even still, because this stuff is just a warmed-over version of this from 10 years ago. Jörg Maywald is the expert who's written this academic-looking book on teaching sexuality at nurseries, at Kitas in Germany. And as the blogger, who we don't have a slide for him, but it will be in the show notes, Eugyppius has managed to find out, Maywald's arguments here have prevailed and have found their way into the policies. And if you're wondering where this leads, well, it can go to an international level. David Scott wrote this more than 5 years ago now, that Peter Newell was convicted for child molestation, and yet he was the author of the handbook for implementing the 3-volume UNICEF manual on the rights of the child. So it looks like figures like Welt are doing the same in Germany and saying children have a perfect right to explore their bodies and masturbate. And when this gets into a scandal, first in Bild Zeitung with the case of Lower Saxony, and then Die Welt in the case of Nordrhein-Westphalia, depending on political shade of the local state government, they might be told, naughty people, you mustn't have masturbating rooms, but the rest of it will be allowed to stand. The idea that children have a right to do these things, the only difference now is that they'll be doing them in front of the nursery teachers, it seems.
Yes, yes, go ahead, Alex.
That's straight into the Netherlands, because here in the Netherlands, there is a council. It's obviously Christian-based with the name, it has Bijbels Beraad M, which means the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. They are just doing a cover story here for something I'm about to show the source for in a moment, which flags to people's attention that the Dutch protocol for teaching trans children, or rather treating trans children, which has now become an international touchstone among trans advocacy, is perhaps going to go the way of the dodo soon. People like to say that the Dutch protocol, like everything else, the Dutch approach in this and that, is so enlightened and we must follow it. And the idea of the 3 stages, first give puberty blockers supposedly to buy time for an undecided child, and then give the hormones, and then finally give the surgery. That's what makes up the Dutch protocol. This came into being as somewhere between an official and an unofficial treatment protocol because of the decentralized nature of healthcare here. It came about in a body which stands halfway between the health insurers and the government. And now, Nederlands Juristenblad, which is actually required reading for all Dutch lawyers, is saying that this is probably unlawful. The Dutch protocol was formulated 5 years ago, and in the introductory paragraph on screen, they're saying that civil courts should not regard the Dutch protocol, which has come into being de facto and been spun out to Britain with the Tavistock Clinic and other places. They shouldn't regard that as de rigueur or legal or moral, because it is, if you apply it, you're sexually maiming people for life, you're preventing them from reproducing, all kinds of complications for body and soul, and it may leave you liable. So Dutch lawyers are in a different position now on this, and that probably hasn't sown its way out into other countries that think that the Dutch protocol has become the gold standard for trans children care.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Alex. Okay, we'll just, if you don't mind, just jump over this and we'll move this section into extra, and let's move on to digital